Well, it's 3 o'clock. School is out. School is in for us. We want to say thank you so much for taking the time out just to come and sit with us, and so we can discuss site orientation supervisors meeting. I am Dr. Lynette Deans, the famous emailer that you'll always see sending information to. I'm the field clinical coordinator for the clinical practicum and intensive students. But we have our different site university supervisors. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Kyla Kearney, and I am supervising the group of interns in the clinical mental health program.
And hello again, to me again. I'm Gwen Newsom, and I will be the university supervisor for the students in the practical class.
I'm Jennifer Barrow, and I'm the university supervisor for the school counseling interns.
Sorry, I was a little distracted. My name is Chad Royal. I am supervising some mental health interns this semester.
And I'm Peggy Whiting. I'm the coordinator of the Counselor Ed program. Welcome.
And then we have Dr. Moody, who is our chair for the Department of Allied Professional. He's not here, but he gives his regard and said welcome as well for coming up to our site orientation meeting held today. So we introduce ourselves. We just want to introduce, since we only have 4 persons, we can go ahead. What you want to do is just say your name and say what site you're from, and just say what student that you will be supervising.
I'm LaQuita Lipscomb. I'm at Helena Elementary School in Roxborough, which is about an hour from here, and I'm supervising Christy Rushford. She's the A2 counselor in my school building.
I'm Ava Thompson, Roseboro Middle School, Durham Public Schools, and it is my pleasure to supervise Christopher Fletcher.
Did you work with him as a student when he was there?
Yes, I did.
That's wonderful.
I'm Sarah Rosen from First Step Services and Care.
I'm supervising
Elizabeth.
I'm Joy Trexler. I work at Holly Grove Middle School, and I'm supervising Kelly Anderson.
Okay, so welcome again. Like I said, we are so delighted, excited that you came all the way from, you said an hour away? Yeah, that's like far in Bahamas now. I'm only 21 myself, and so, anything like an hour is like a lot, too much. But anyway, so we're just going to go right into it. There are going to be some persons who come in and out. I just want to make a quick announcement with the parking thing. If you're parked in, what zone is it?
Reserved.
You're parked in reserved. Anybody parked reserved?
Slot.
Okay, good. You're okay. Yeah, because we don't want anybody parking totally. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and we're going to call on Dr. Whiting. He's going to come and tell you all about our supervision orientation. And we're also going to be recording, so those persons who didn't come, we're going to place it on our website again so they can be able to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this feels a little formal, and we don't need to be quite that formal, but I do want to say thank you to all of you for taking the Friday afternoon and coming and spending it with us. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. If you're helping to supervise our students, because this is the culminating experience for them. So I'm just going to walk us through a few things. You have some documents in your packet that go along with this PowerPoint. So if you can pull out the one that looks like this, it's just a little flyer on our programs. And I just want to make a couple of comments because in previous orientations, people have said, I'm not familiar with your total program because I'm just dealing with one student and one program track. So I just wanted to give an overview about that. We have three program tracks. That's fine, come on in. We have three program tracks. We have a clinical mental health program track that is 60 semester hours, and it is aligned with the requirements to be a licensed professional counselor in North Carolina. Then we have a school counseling program that is 51 semester hours that gives the students everything they need for DPI endorsement as a K-12 school counselor in North Carolina. Then we have a career counseling track, which is 48 semester hours. So you see that the program varies just a little bit. And those are persons who will be going out and working sometimes as a career specialist in the schools or in a university career center or in business as a career counselor. And one interesting thing that we're real proud of that I just want to go ahead and state to you is that just this summer, we just got fully endorsed by KCREP, which is the Council for the Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. Mouthful. We already have the program accreditation for our face-to-face 3 programs, and now we are fully endorsed for our online career program. It's the first in the country. So we're very pleased about that, and we'll be engaged in recruitment efforts this next year to get that up and running, and we are indebted to Dr. Royal for his leadership in making that happen. So I just wanted to tell you about that. If you look now in your packet, you have something that should look familiar to you that's called a Memorandum of Agreement. And it should look familiar because every student has this contractual agreement signed between you and us. And this actually serves as legal documentation that our folks are placed with you for a designated amount of time. From the university attorney's perspective, this is a very important document so that we're tracking and have partnerships with our sites so that we know where our students are and what's required of them. This is filled out by you and signed and has already been done for this semester. If your person happens to be remaining with you for an additional semester, this will have to be filled out again. We used to have an agreement that lasted for years, so if you've been supervising our students for a while, you know that. But now we've been asked to break that up semester by semester because we have periods of time in between the semesters that the students aren't supervised. So it's just legally better if we have it semester by semester. So you will see that you'll be signing this again if the student stays with you. I want to make a couple of comments about the difference between practicum and internship. All of our students have had the majority of their coursework before they go out in the field. Some programs that are right here in our area do this differently, where students go out into the field at the beginning of the program. We do not do that. Our students have assignments that may ask them to go interface with personnel and with personnel like yourselves out in various sites, but they do not actually do work in the sites until the end of the program. So you can know as a supervisor that they have had the bulk of their coursework before they get to you. So they've had all the theoretical foundations, they've had a course in ethics, they've had their specialty courses in school or clinical mental health or career counseling. So they're very well versed. They have had skill development classes that use a laboratory experience with role plays, and all of us are pretty familiar because we all went through those things too. So you're very familiar with that. So toward the end of the program, they have 2 field site experiences, every student, irrespective of their track. One is called a practicum, and that's a much less intensive experience. It really is the first step out of the university into the real world of work as a counselor. That experience is for 100 clock hours. As opposed to, if you look over here at the internship, there's a big jump then to 600 hours in an internship. And that 600 hours can be done all in one semester, in which case the student would be with you virtually 40 hours a week. Or it can be split up into 2 semesters, 300 clock hours and 300 clock hours, where they're with you on average about 20 hours a week. So we give our students that option. But if you've got an intern, that means they've already done their initial practicum experience. So these are sequenced. And these are things that, if you've been with us, are real obvious things, but we got some feedback that our new supervisors don't always know what the sequence is. So I'm taking a little bit more time just to be careful and make sure that everybody understands that. So all of our students engage in the practicum first. And I'll tell you my experience of the practicum students. Glenn Newsom and I are the two that typically work with the practicum students. And these are students who they're cautious, they're scared, these are massive generalizations. They're also very excited to be there. They have various levels of experience coming into the practicum class, and so some are ready to go and they're really confident, and others are, I've never counseled a person before, I've been studying about this, I've done related experience, but this is my first time sitting down with a real client in a professional setting. So you get a whole variety of experiences, I would say, in the practicum, if you've got a practicum student. So the expectation that you have of a practicum student might be different from what you would have even a first semester intern. Even if they're going to split this experience up, you can know they've already done a practicum, if not with you, somewhere else, if you have an intern. So you need to be clear about whether you've got a practicum student or whether you've got a 300-hour intern or a 600-hour intern, because the requirements will vary a little bit. If we compare these two experiences a little bit more, you also will find that at the practicum level, you may or may not provide on-site supervision for the students. And I say that that's not a requirement because we provide them with 1 hour of supervision every week in addition to their class time. They do that in pairs. We call it dyadic supervision, so that there are 2 students and 1 of us, and we meet together to listen to their recordings that they're required to do, to give clinical feedback, to talk about issues that have come up, etc. And so we do that for each practicum student. In addition to that, they will meet with us for an hour and a half per week for what we call group supervision. Now the interns, they will meet for an hour and a half of group supervision with us here on campus, but we are asking you, and we'll see this later in the presentation, we're asking you to provide them with ongoing site supervision, because they will not be meeting for that dyadic time that they did in practicum. And one thing that you'll notice here is that even in practicum, and we want all of our site supervisors to really understand this, that even in practicum, the students, we are required, because we're a national accredited program, we are required to provide the students with individual and group counseling, not just observation. So obviously, you would want, we're not asking you just to take the students and throw them in. We understand that you are also a gatekeeper of your site and the students and your clients that are there. And we know that you have to gain confidence that our students are prepared to do the kinds of counseling that we would hope that they would be individually and in group. But please do be aware, we just want everybody to know that this is not an observation experience, because we've had some things come up before where the site supervisor was so hesitant and holding the student back from allowing them to engage in counseling that many, many weeks would go by and the students would not have had an opportunity really to engage in counseling. And this is their culminating experience, and particularly for the intern, you'll find out that this is actually the final task before graduation for these students. And we want them, by the time they get to the end of their internship, they should be able to really mirror the activities and the schedule and all the breadth of what you do. We would hope that they have had exposure to that and that they could mirror that. They'll be better employees for you or for someone else if you will help us to do that. So that's one of the big differences between these two. Are there any questions about just this difference? I'm going to talk a little bit about our roles, our role and your role, but any questions that you have about the practicum or the internship? What differentiates them? Anybody? Okay. Let's look then at what we call direct and indirect hours. So all of our students, practicum students and interns, both have what's called direct and indirect hour requirements. So at the practicum level, what you'll find is that, well, let me give a definition of this. Direct hours are hours that they are providing direct service to the population that you serve. So direct service. So you can think in your side, who are our clients and what kinds of services do we actually offer to them directly? So if you're a school counselor, that's going to be a little bit different from in a career center. It's going to be a little bit different than in a clinical mental health setting. So you decide, what is direct service, and then generally 40% of the total number of hours that the student needs to do need to be in what we call direct service, 40%. So what that equates into is 40 out of the 100 hours for practicum and 240 total hours out of the 600 for internship. And those are activities that either involve individual or group counseling or involve some sort of formal or informal consultation. That's what defines a direct hour. And if you have any question about how something counts, because you're going to find that you're going to be signing off on logs of hours for the students, then your internship or practicum faculty person can always answer that question. You can shoot that person an email and they'll say, yeah, that looks like, to me, that's a direct hour. Does that seem like a direct hour to you? And we can collaborate if there's any question about that. The remaining part of the work of the counselor, 60%, can be up to 60%, which would be 60 hours for practicum or 360 of the total 600 for internship, can be what we call indirect hours. And those hours include everything else that is in your work life in a typical week of work for you that is not what we call direct service. That's okay. There we go. Thank you. So this could involve staff meetings, it could involve paperwork, it could involve continuing education. So for example, there might be a district conference that you want your student to go with you to, or it might be a counselor, some sort of counseling conference in the state or something of that nature. You could be doing something collaboratively with another site or another school. All of those would constitute what we call indirect hours. So we're not expecting that every moment that they're there that they need to be in direct service to clients, because that's not a realistic way that counseling is done out in the world. And we want them to have the experience of what does counseling really look like in a professional setting. They've learned about it, and they should have a pretty good idea of that, but they may not have engaged in that, certainly as a professional, since they've been working in the master's. So that's part of what you're providing for them, is helping them know what a work day would actually look like. So the combined direct and indirect hours that make up the 100 hours of practicum or the 600 hours of internship. Now, if they're doing a 300-hour internship, then it's going to be 120 direct hours, so you're just splitting it in half. So that when they get finished, they've got the total number of 240 direct hours. Any questions about direct versus indirect? So now we want to talk a little bit about what your role is and what our role is. And I'll say it this way, that we have what's called a dual supervision model. And that means that we have both faculty and site supervision. So the person that is teaching the section of practicum or internship that your student is in for group supervision is what's called the university supervisor. And they take the primary responsibility for the critique of the recordings of the actual sessions that the students do. They facilitate the group supervision hour and a half per week. And if it's a practicum student, they host the dyads so that they're meeting very intensively with the students each week. And it's our sole responsibility to give each student a grade. So practicum and internship carries with it an ABC grade. So we do want you to know that. Some universities have a pass-fail kind of situation for their field sites. We have requirements that they have to meet and standards that distinguish an A from a B, et cetera. So we're the sole people that provide that. Now, obviously, we're going to do that in collaboration with you because you're actually seeing these folks on a real regular basis. All right, that's okay. Come on in. You as a site supervisor, what we're doing, you have some very distinct responsibilities, but the critique of the tapes is not really required, but it's allowed. So if you find that you would like to hear some of the recordings of your student, because that would enable you to fill out an evaluation from a more informed perspective, then you can ask the student to let you do that if you're not participating in direct observation. Some of the site supervisors just directly observe. They're in the room with the counselor when they're doing, particularly at the beginning when they're doing activities, which is also fine. That's called live supervision. You're right there, you see them in action. But it's not required. You can count on us to make sure that we're critiquing the recordings that are required. In internship, as I said before, if you got a person who's interning with you, then we are asking that you provide them with 1 hour of supervision per week. That is a KCREP requirement. Our accrediting people require that. So that is part of the responsibility. You will find that on the final evaluation, you will be asked to total the number of hours of individual supervision that you've had with that intern and document that and sign off on that. And that information goes forward with the student as they apply for licensure, even though the licensing board doesn't take master's supervision, but they do require that folks be supervised in their master's internship. Does that make sense? We used to be able to count hours that they accrued while they were interning, and some of you may remember that, and the board has now changed that. So all the supervision is post-master's now for the board, but they still will require that documentation. We will ask that you evaluate the student performance, and we're going to look at the evaluation forms in just a minute. We may ask you to do that at midterm and at the end of the semester. And we will also ask those of you who have interns to sign an ethics document that just attests to the fact that you think this person is an ethical person going out in the field. We don't ask our practicum people to do that, but we do ask our interns to have that as a part of their final placement project. So you'll see that will be passed by the student to do that. We're also asking that you be the point person for the student on site. So that means that you are going to provide a place for them to work. You're going to have adequate resources for them, and you're going to help them find clients or students with whom they will be working and making recordings. And you are the chief go-to person on the site. So if a student has a question, and what Dr. Newsom and I have found is that practicum students have lots of questions, I'm going to, and she does the same thing, redirect them back to you as the point person. You know, we're going to say, go talk with Ms. Lipscomb about that and see how that's handled on the site, because you're really the resource expert for the site that you're representing, that you're hosting. We also ask that you provide just ongoing day-to-day training for our students on the various activities that come up on site. So the way we view supervision is that we have a collaborative role with you, and together then the student has two professionals assigned to them all during the practicum and the internship situation that help them with their own professional development, which is what this is all about anyway. And you will experience, as we do, a variety of levels of maturity and background, relevant experience, and competence in various counseling activities, and confidence levels. That's going to be on a continuum, and some folks will be full of all of that, and some folks will be polishing in one or several of those areas. So we ask that you stay in communication with us, we will be in communication with you, so that the students get the best experience. They get the best experience overall. One more backwards. Okay. If you will take a minute and look now at one of the evaluations that's in your packet, I think you've got actually two of them in here. You have one for practicum, and I think you've got one for internship. Is that right? Is that what they've got, Dr. Names, I believe?
Yeah, either one are correct, because I just printed it off there.
Okay, we're just giving you examples of what these evaluations look like. I find that it's easier when I'm supervising someone, if I know in advance what I'm going to be held accountable for filling out, so that then I can sort of gear myself to what am I going to have to say about this person. So if you look at the one that says clinical evaluation for practicum, you can get familiar with what it is we're asking you to rate our students on. You will have some foundational skills, you will have some dispositions, those attitudes and ethics and those kinds of things. And then we have some open-ended questions that we're asking you about how you think the student is doing. And I'll go on record as saying that I find it to be the most useful, and other faculty can speak up about this if you disagree, but I find it to be the most useful if you will fill out this form and actually sit down with the student and go over it. Because what's difficult is if you have constructive feedback that you've seen on site, it's easier for you to deliver that feedback than it is for me. Because I haven't seen the student in as consistent of a way on site as you have. So I would prefer if you would meet with the student individually and let them see what you're filling out and actually make it sort of an educational experience for them, a learning feedback experience for them. And then there'll be that evaluation, the formal evaluation will be given to us at least once at the end of the semester. Sometimes there'll be both a midpoint and a final evaluation. The reason for the midpoint evaluation is we're just touching base to make sure there are no surprises. We don't want to have constructive feedback given so much at the end that there's no time then for the student really to change something. So we would prefer it if all along when you're meeting with a student, if you'd be willing just to step up and give them feedback. And then these evaluations, you will be instructed how to get those to us. We've done them in a variety of ways over time. Sometimes they're put in a sealed envelope and you sign across the back and the student brings it back to us. But I don't want that to be mistaken for the students never gotten the feedback before, because if I open it and there are lots of areas of improvement and that hasn't been spoken to the student, it's hard for me to do that. I'm going to then get on the phone and say, would you mind sitting down with the student and talking this out, because I'm not sure what you've seen. I'm not sure of all the examples in this, and it would be helpful. Any questions about those evaluations? Those will be given to you in advance of when they're due. The student will know when the dates are, when the due dates are for those, and we just ask that you pace it enough to where, and we ask our students to help you with this, pace it where you've got enough time to be able to fill it out, talk to the student, and get it back to us. Now, in terms of what students are required to do, since this is a graded experience, an ABC graded experience, they have certain requirements that they have. These line up with our national accrediting body, so we didn't make these up from the air. They came sort of designated with that accreditation. The first thing is that if you do not receive a syllabus directly from the university faculty person, you can always request one. We sort of put the word out to send those out to our folks, but if you've not received one and your student has not provided you one, then you can email the faculty supervisor and they will be more than happy to send you the syllabus, which will just show you what the students are required to do with the due dates. All of those things are there. There are course assignments for both practicum and internship, and one of the things that is important to know is that those are uniform across the board. So if we have multiple sections of practicum or multiple instructors for internship, which we do, the syllabus and the requirements are exactly the same across the board because they're dictated by our accrediting body and their best practice guidelines that we operate with in all of our classes. The recordings, there are required recordings every semester of field site experience, and those are done in order for us to have a look at the clinical skills of the students. That's really the function, the only function really of the recordings. It's a way that we can peek into live work that's going on between the student counselor and the client and see what's happening. So we get to see them counsel in action. These are done with all the ethical guidelines around them, and we stress that over and over and over again before the students ever get to practicum. But certainly when they're in practicum and internship, they've all heard that spiel now because they've had their first classes. So they received the syllabus, they've heard about the recordings, etc. The students are asked to make 6 recordings per semester. So it's 6 for practicum, the same amount for internship. If they do 2 semesters of internship, they'll do an additional 6 recordings in the second internship. And these should be a look at the skills of the counselor. Okay? And these are the recordings that you may ask, if you'd like to view. We will take the primary responsibility for that, but certainly if it helps you supervise your student, if you haven't had the opportunity to directly observe them, it's a pretty good way, actually, to see how the students are doing. We give them a consent form that is filled out by the client or the parents of the client if the client's a minor. So every school child will have parental or guardian approval. And if you have a consent form for the tapes that you would prefer to use over ours, that's fine with us, as long as it designates that the person is a student in training, so that we know that the clients are fully informed, which is what the ethical guideline is. But there is a consent form, and the students can show you what that looks like. It's on our letterhead. It's a formal looking thing, and the client signs off on it. And then the other thing that we just want to say about what we ask our students to do, we want them to be reflective practitioners. So we have journal entries that they make so that we're asking them to be very conscious about themselves and their activities and what their experiences are on site, and we want them to be reflective practitioners. So anything that you can do that will support them thinking about, now what do you think was going on with this person when they came in? Or why do you think the principal would want us to blah, blah? Or what do you think was your strength in a particular counseling activity that you did? We encourage you to ask those kinds of questions of our students, and we'll be doing the same thing. I think we have an example of the log sheet. This is one that was used this past summer, so you can ignore the dates that are here, but this is just an example for you. Every student will be filling this log sheet out every week that tells us and you, and is a log for them to keep up with what their own activities are. They'll be keeping up every week, so that it's very important for the interns, so that they know where they are on direct hours versus indirect hours, and also so that they can get the bigger picture of how they're spending their time. You know, are they spending their time in a meaningful, diverse way, that if I'm studying to be a school counselor, that I would have exposure to all the variety of things that a school counselor would do by the time I get to the end of my internship. So we have categories that are listed on the log. This one up here is an example from internship. This is sort of a revised copy of that was used this summer, because our summer modules are a little bit more compact than during the regular semester, fall and spring semester. But you'll see that they're by week. And if you look, you're not seeing it on here, but at the bottom of this, you will be asked to sign off on this log sheet as a supervisor. So you'll be verifying, yes, in fact, this is what the students did. And it's a way for them to be accountable to you on how they're spending their time. And there'll be a place for you to sign. You can sign weekly if you like, or you can determine that it's fine with you for the student to keep up with that, and then you'll do one signature at the end. It's really your preference. If you just kind of want to keep up week by week, and then just sign week by week, there is a designation for you to do that, but we will accept it as long as it has a signature at the end. That's the log. And the students are responsible for categorizing what they're doing and keeping up with what they're doing, and how many direct and how many indirect. And we frequently in our group supervision will say, is everybody keeping up with, where are you now? You're 4 weeks in. Where are you? Are you on track of how you need to divide your hours out so that you get to the final destination when the semester is over? We also want you to know, and Dr. James has provided this for you, there's a handout in your packet about the dress code for our practical and internship students. So we do ask them to dress professionally. And as we know, professional behavior is more than just dress, but we do emphasize the whole idea of being a professional. So we want them to, you can see the guidelines that they've received from the program. We talk about this a lot before they ever get on site. And so just so that you will know what we are asking them to do, we're giving them some guidelines. And I'll go on record as saying that in the years that I've been supervising folks in a variety of programs in 3 different states, we almost never see a complaint about how one of our male students is dressed. Mm-hmm. But we do, and part of that is because we have fewer males than we do females. But, so we have the numbers thing going, but the women, there's more variety in their dress, and we're asking people just to be aware of how they're carrying themselves. So certainly, if you have ever had any question about that, then please go directly to the student and let's correct that just as soon as we can. But we do want you to know that they've heard from us that we have a dress code. Each student also carries student liability insurance. And they have provided that for us. They did it through ASCA, or through ACA, or through the Health Association. There are a variety of places. Typically, we ask them to go through ACA because we're encouraging membership there, and the student liability insurance is now included in student membership in ACA. So it's a less expensive way for the students to be covered. This is for their protection, our protection, and your protection. Just in the event we just live in a world where it's just a safe thing to have the liability insurance on the student. So every student has that. They cannot go around in the field without it. Talk about this. Okay, let's stop there and see what your questions are for us. We're all here, all of us who are teaching one of the sections of practicum or internship are here, so we'll be happy to entertain. I'm jumping into your questions. Yes.
Yes. The consent form that the students have at
Mm-hmm.
Department of State, is there a Spanish one?
Yes, there is. And I sent it to Chris today.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, he wrote to me and said, is there a Spanish version? We do have one, and I sent it to him today, so he's got it in his email. But we do have that, should you want that for Spanish speaking. Other questions? Anything else that we can help clarify? This is an exciting time for our students, and they will have a better experience if we are all on the same page collaborating. And questions will emerge, particularly if you're a first-time supervisor, questions will occur, and you can be in direct communication with either Dr. Gaines, with any of us really, but with the direct faculty supervisor for that student, and they can tell you who that is. So, yeah, no question.
Yes, the program evaluation, well, their evaluation that we do for them, is that electronic where we can type directly onto the form and then send it via email?
We have it posted on our website, and I don't recall exactly. I know there's an electronic version of it. I don't remember if it's in Word or something like that. It's not an actual digital survey where you point and click and then click submit. You'd have to print it or whatever the case might be, save it and then email it. But we can look into it.
But it's not where we can actually, I know before it has not been where I could actually type on it and then save it and then email it?
I don't think so, but it's
Yeah, I just had
possible.
to print it out and then write on it. Then I can scan it back to you and email it.
Yeah. Let me check. Maybe we'll move on to another question and you come back to me and I can tell you for sure.
Yeah, and that would be something close to looking into doing also, because anything that will make your life simpler, because we greatly appreciate you doing this, and that would be great. So we'll be happy to do that. Other questions? Okay, let me give you a couple of other pieces of information. We have a little survey that we'd like for you to fill out that's in your packet, and you can do that before you leave today. But I want to tell you about just a couple of other things that are available for you. Many of you know, most of you know that the North Carolina LPC board has moved to use of the licensed professional counselor supervisor credential. So persons who are going to participate in that required postmaster supervision for professionals that have graduated from the master's program will need to be an LPCS. And one of the requirements for becoming an LPCS is that you have a certain number of either CEUs or hours in a graduate course in clinical supervision. So what we've begun to do over the last several summers is offer such a course. So Dr. Royal teaches that course. It is online, and it is available to you each summer. So my understanding is that we'll be up and running for next summer to offer it again. And so should you be thinking ahead in your own career that you want to meet those requirements to be an LPCS, here's a way. I personally think it's easier to take a graduate 3-hour course in supervision than to try to collect all the units that you need. It can be done that way, but you're going to be going to a lot of conferences and you have to find sessions on supervision specifically to account for all of those for the board. And if you're interested in that credential, you can look on the LPC board website for North Carolina, and it will tell you what the additional requirements beyond the hours toward supervision that you have to have. But that course is Counseling CON 5305 Clinical Supervision, and it's offered every summer. And then we also want to let you know that we would love it if we had an opportunity to write each one of you a check for the work that you're going to do with our students. We would really love that. And unfortunately, we're not in economic times where we can do that. So what we try to do is to provide you with some continuing education opportunities, because we know each of you has a license that you've got to have a certain number of CEUs to renew every year. So one of the things that we have is we have a webinar series. And these are the fall webinar dates and little abstracts, and tells you who's going to do them in your packet. It's on this goldenrod color paper right here.
Different colors.
Oh, different colors. Okay, everybody's, it's not separately. Okay, so it's on the colored piece of paper that's in there. And it tells you, these are all on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And it's a webinar so that you can tune in. You will have a supervisor code, so it will be at no cost to you, and you receive 1 CEU per webinar that you attend. So we have, the first one is coming up on September the 30th. Dr. Gaines is going to do that. She has a very rich background as a nurse, as an RN, and she's done work in career development with breast cancer patients. And so she's going to present on career thoughts and spirituality in women diagnosed with breast cancer. So that will be the September 30th one. It is followed, we have one a month. October 21st, Dr. Newsom, who happens to be the ethics chair for the LPC board in North Carolina, is going to speak a little bit, one step over the line, how not to lose your counseling license. And you can see the description that's in your packet of the kinds of things she's going to talk about just generally, what are the kinds of things that get people in trouble, et cetera. On November 18th, Dr. Kurian and another colleague, Dr. Horn, are going to present some things about substance abuse, particularly specialization as a licensed clinical addiction specialist. So if you're working in that area, that would be very helpful for you. And then December 16th, Dr. Royal is going to talk about, he's our technology person, and he's going to talk about helping kids and adolescents with a concept called digital wellness. And you'll see the description of that. So we invite you to participate in that. Can you tell them how they would go about signing up?
I do. I want to mute the microphone so I don't record the code.
We also have one drive-in workshop per academic year. That's going to be happening in the spring. And so you will receive a notice about that one-day workshop. And some of you have come to those before, and they're on various topics, and we'll put out some announcements about that so that you can see when those are. But there will not be one until the spring this year. We alternate between fall and spring, and that conference will be in the spring this year. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, any comments from any of the university folks that you'd like to add to what we've said?
I'd just like to say thank you all for coming out on a Friday afternoon and agreeing to work with our students. I think that's particularly important. As Dr. Whiting had mentioned, it is at this point that students begin to get an affirmation of, this is the choices, this is the things I've done. So your honest feedback really helps us with that process. So thank you so much.
And I want to emphasize again that if you ever have a question or a concern, or something that you want us to stress in our supervision with the student, then the best way to get us is really just shoot an email to us. You will receive email communication with the faculty supervisor. And most of us on our emails have got, a signature that gives you our telephone number and all that kind of thing. And we really want this to be an open door policy where you can pick up the phone and call us and say, can we chat a little bit about my student who's with me? Because here are some concerns I have, or here are some areas of improvement that we can work together during the course of the semester. That makes for the best supervision for the students. And I also want to say that our students are accustomed to getting constructive feedback. So this is not the first opportunity. You won't be the Lone Ranger giving them feedback about how they're doing. They get tons of feedback from us in courses, skill development courses, particularly prior to going out in the field. And an interesting thing for you to know is that each one of our students, in order to be endorsed to be with you, has completed what we call a mid-program review. And they come in, they meet with all the faculty, they do it individually, they present an electronic portfolio that they've been working on thus far. We ask them to articulate a philosophy of counseling, and whether it's school counseling and mental health or theoretical orientation. We look at samples of their work, and we endorse them or hold them back from going out into the field if we think they're not ready and they need some more time. And this does happen. We'll say, you need some more time. So students get loads of feedback from us, including that endorsement before they ever get to you. So you need not be shy with feedback to them. We obviously want feedback to be supportive and constructive so that they can then increase in their own development of their professionalism or skill or ethical reasoning or whatever it is that you want them to be better at. Sometimes our feedback is around personality issues. You can have a wonderful student academically whose level of confidence is not there, and we need to encourage and push a little bit so that they'll go and do and take initiative. We have those situations come up. So your feedback is very valuable, and together, I think when they hear it from a field site person and the faculty, that it helps with the credibility of what they're hearing and just helps them be better when they leave us and go out into the world. So, any other comments from faculty or any other questions?
Well, I really don't want to monopolize the conversation, but there's one additional thing. I don't know if I heard you talk about site visits, and so
I did not.
So for one of the things that you want to be aware, particularly with the students in the practicum sessions, that I will be doing site visits, and we had talked about midterm, so maybe my site visits will occur around that midterm period. So again, if you look at the evaluation form, those are the kinds of things that I'd like to talk about. It's not necessary that the student be there. If they are, that would be wonderful. And if you can arrange that, that would be great. But my perspective, and I think most of our perspectives would be that we want to have an opportunity to make sure that the student is there, that they're performing up to your expectations. And if there is specific feedback you'd like to share, we can get it in a timely manner before the end of the semester. And so the site visits typically can go from 20 minutes to an hour. It just depends. Again, it's just an opportunity for us to look at your site, see what's going on, and see how that lines up with the things that we talk about in our group sessions on campus. Thanks.
Is that just for practicum or practicum and?
Practicum and internship.
And your individual faculty supervisor will be in contact with you to schedule those and If there's a travel issue or if there's a schedule issue, we can do those through Skype. There are lots of different ways that we can do that. We can certainly have telephone conferences with you, so we want it to be as easy as possible for everybody to be able to communicate. It might be interesting, just before we close, to have, I know you said this at the beginning, but to have those of you that are teaching a practicum or internship, if you want to go meet that person individually, that might be a good thing to do, just to mingle a little bit before we go. Our formal agenda is over, unless you have other questions, and we'll entertain those in the next few minutes, but we don't want to keep you on a Friday afternoon any longer. We appreciate you being here. Dr. Newsom is the practicum person. How many of you have a practicum student? So if y'all will just kind of pair up for a minute, just so that you can see. Dr. Freeman, you've got a mental health internship. You can see Dr. Freeman then. Dr. Barrow has got a school internship. Dr. Royal has got a career internship. Am I doing this right? No. No. Dr. Royal's got a career
I've got
internship.
mental health.
Mental health, sorry. So we want to make sure that you have an opportunity just to talk with your person before. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon.